Yeah, thank you. Oh, Jen's with us. Are you, Jen?
I am, Chris. Good morning.
Hello, Jen. Pleased to have you with us. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the Thetford Town Council Cemetery Committee meeting. We're going to start today by having a moment's silence. So I invite you to join me in that silence to remember the life and works of Prince Philip. So let's just be quiet for a few moments. Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll now commence with the agenda for the meeting. So we'll start off. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest at this stage?
No, Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't got the agenda on the screen. I've just got the wildlife.
Oh, it's up. Oh, it's yeah. Because what I can see is the agenda. I'm not quite sure what's happening on your one. If you've got something different.
Well, I've got Mark's presentation.
Oh, okay.
I've got the agenda.
Yeah.
I have the agenda.
Even I haven't got my own presentation, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
Well, I have, but it's in the background. If you sort of it's not showing on my screen, I have got the agenda from Chris's. That's
well, it sounds like a technical glitch, but we're not quite sure what it is, Brenda. There, so if you bear with us, we'll.
What has Jenny got? Jenny, what have you got?
I've got the agenda.
You have, okay. Well, I'm sorry about that, Brenda, but I think we will continue, and maybe it will resolve itself when things move on. Okay, so we haven't got any disclosures. So any apologies for absence? I don't think we have, because I think all the members of the committee are here.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll move on to 96120, which is the confirming the minutes of the meeting that we held in January. And Kerry pointed out to me that there was a slight difference in the minutes to what we'd agreed at the meeting. And it's to do with, shall I read out what she sent me? And then we can agree whether or not we're going to amend the minutes.
Yes, please.
The lawn cemetery has items. Well, this is what we actually put in the minutes. The lawn cemetery has items that have been placed on graves, and the council will need to contact and ask families to reduce the number of vases and commemorative items that have been placed on the lawn areas in front of the memorial. And then the second paragraph is the public will be asked to remove all Christmas wreaths and items after the 1st of February, leading up to ready for grass cutting to commence on the 1st of March. It was agreed to write a letter to request these items be removed after 1st of February 2021 prior to grass cutting. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. But the change is to do with really the letter. It was agreed to write letters to deed holders of affected graves asking for these items to be removed by 1st of March in readiness for grass cutting. So it was about removing the items, not the Christmas items, but the other items. And the second bit about the Christmas items was notices to be put up in the cemetery advising the public that Christmas wreaths and Christmas items not removed by the 31st of January will be removed by cemetery staff from 1st of February onwards. So that is what we spoke about in the last meeting, but the minutes don't quite reflect that. So are we happy to replace or to adjust the minutes or make a note in these minutes that they were incorrect previously. We agreed on that.
Agreed.
If you agree, I'll change the minutes and put them in a different colour and so on, you know, so that they know that they have been changed. We have to do that, so that will be done. I got that from Nick's report because it looks a bit too detailed for me to have taken down.
Okay.
So I'll make sure that the changes reflect Kerry's letter.
Okay, I've got a hand up from Brenda.
Yeah, that goes out is the norm, really. It's what has been done in the past. So that shouldn't be any problem. They should be used to getting.
I mean, what actually happened in terms of the letters and the notices is what is according to what Kerry's correction is. So we're really just amending the minutes to actually show what really happened and what we intended to happen. So just a slight bit of wording that's wrong. So okay, that's fine. Then we've agreed that, and I'll have a chat with Chris Crimmin afterwards just to confirm exactly how we're going to do that. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks very much.
Okay, and then we're moving on to 962, which is cemetery officers and burial administrators update. So we got reports from 2 people here at least. So who would you like to go first, Kerry, on that?
Morning, everyone. Okay, so I'll start with the burial figures. So far this year, we've carried out 24 interments, 9 of which were ashes, and 15 were burials. 7 were in the older section and 8 were in the cemetery extension. March was a concern for us as we had 8 burials booked in and we hadn't got to the end of February at that point. So we were concerned because if it carried on like that, we may have to postpone burials, which obviously we did not want to do. Luckily, we had some burials in hand from January and February. So we used 3 of those in March, leaving us with 4 extras that we can use during the year if we have to go over our monthly limit of 6. This month, we currently have 2 burials booked in and 3 ashes interments.
Lovely, thank you.
So Nick and myself were talking about things that we would like to see happening at the cemetery. So we came up with a wish list of ideas. Nick's going to speak to you about some of the ideas, and I'm also going to speak to you about some. We thought it would be nice to set up a bereavement cafe once restrictions allow, so that there's a local place in the community so that the bereaved can pop along and find others who have been through a similar bereavement. It's somewhere that they can go and find others who will understand what they're going through. We thought it would be nice to hold it in the council chamber so that the tea room is close by for refreshments. And there's also a big screen in the council chamber so we can live stream the event for people who either can't get to the Guildhall or for people who live away but would like to attend it. We thought it would be nice to also invite our Thetford-based funeral directors, some members of the clergy and Humane celebrants to attend as well. And we could also contact grief support organisations to ask for information booklets and business cards so that attendees can take those away if they wish. The other idea that we were thinking of was also to have some umbrellas up at the cemetery for use.
Can I just stop you there a minute, Kerry, because Brenda had her hand up since you started talking about that item, and I think it might be about that item. So, Brenda, have you got something you wanted to say?
Well, no, it's back a bit for what she was saying.
Oh, okay.
On our priorities, which I think it started about 5 years ago, and that was to have a small garden area. And I think Nick and I'm not sure if Dennis came or not. I'm sure Chris came, but we went to Bury. And what we done is we looked at the funeral boxes. Well, and I know you come down to the cemetery last autumn time when we had that man, but he was trying to complete us the wrong way. But it hasn't been on the agenda since. And I think with what Kerry was saying about the burials and that, them boxes could actually start paying for themselves now. And because that has been on the agenda in the past, people are asking me, and I said, well, you just said, well, yeah, they're just waiting to find where they can get the money. But I know Ros did say where we could get the money as long as we work out a business plan for it. But we
Yeah.
haven't done anything about it since. And that was if you go towards the gate in the cemetery at the back, just before then, I think the one that we was looking at, if Nick can correct me, that was going to be on the right hand side, and something else was going to be on the other side. But I think that's important because that actually will start to bring money into the cemetery.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brenda. I've got Dennis with a hand up as well, so I'll take Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did attend this very cemetery at the time, and we would look at, as far as I can remember, Chair, don't we still have that as a project?
I think we do, and I think I think it's one of the victims of COVID, really, that has been sort of put on hold. And also, I think because of Ros leaving, that just hasn't been picked up on, but it's not forgotten.
Yeah,
And so thanks for reminding us, Brenda, and that may be something we need to give emphasis to at our next meeting.
Yeah.
And,
Chair, we did have a meeting with the gentleman at the actual cemetery,
on site,
didn't we?
yeah.
Yes, so but it's very nice of Brenda to remind us of that. It's great.
Yeah,
It hasn't been, it's not dropped completely.
and he did send a plan through, which was
Absolutely.
incredibly ambitious compared to what we were
What we
talking about.
wanted.
Then we had a revised one through, and then we haven't really given it much attention since then. So that really should be a major item at our next meeting, and we could even be talking about it before then.
Thank you, Chair.
Should I put it as an action point, Chair?
Yeah, put it as an action point to sort of bring that to our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks very much then. Okay, anybody else want to say anything else about what Brenda's brought up? Okay, that's great. I'll Kerry, back to you. Thanks for that. That's for holding there.
Okay, so umbrellas. We thought it would be nice to have some at the cemetery for use by funeral attendees. We were looking at having them personalised, and Nick has been designing a logo for us to use. Prices range from £11.41 each to £13.21 each for a minimum order of 10.
Okay, so anyone got any thoughts on that? Can't see any hands going up. Oh, yeah, Brenda.
Yeah, sorry. I
That's
think
all
it's a fantastic idea, but obviously it's down to your budget and what you've got planned. Because if you start hitting your budget and then you ask finance for money for your boxes, they say, well, why did you waste your money on that? I think it's just looking at stages of what you're going to do. So to me, if I was on cemetery all the time, I would look at what my plans for the next few months or that year, and plot things in. But it is a fantastic idea, because sometimes that is one thing you forget. It's a nice sunny day. You're going to a funeral. Oh my God, the heavens open up. You just can't tell. It's a fantastic idea, but obviously plan things in and look at your budget.
Okay, thanks for that, Brenda. And Dennis has got his hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Have I unmiked?
No, we can hear you okay.
Okay, good. Well, Brenda's stolen most of my thunder. I think it's something we need to go ahead with if we have some money left from the budget and everything. It depends on the budgeting arrangements, but it would be a nice gesture for people, because there's no use. There's nothing worse than standing out in something like that when you're getting soaking wet. So I would be supportive of that idea if we have the budget, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree with both those comments, or both of you there on similar comments. I think it is a great idea, but it is about our budgets, and we haven't actually got the budget as an item on this agenda, but we can talk around it. But I'm not quite sure whether we can make a decision about it.
We were asked not to by the finance manager.
Okay.
Nobody's got it on this month because they've got to get to the end of the year and then see see what's what. It's a bit more complicated finishing month 12. And if I could say, this perhaps has to be an action point for next month, because we haven't had any notification. There's no agenda number on this. And we need to have a look at what the logos say and the exact costings.
Okay, I've
So
got
perhaps
Brenda
that can
with her
go on
hand
next
up
month
again.
as well,
So,
or next agenda.
Brenda, would you like to come in again?
Yeah, I don't want to Nick. I don't want to pinch Nick's thing, because I know he's looking at logos, and obviously it'd be a town council one. But on whether I'm wondering whether that is something that you could actually work with the funeral parlours with.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can't make it.
Okay, thank you. I've also got Jenny has got a hand up as well. Sorry, you may have been before Brenda. I didn't notice it.
That's okay, Chairman. Both good ideas, and I don't know if Kerry was part and Nick was part of a conversation I had a couple of years ago about having a bereavement room for bereaved people. It was a couple of years ago, because it was just after Councillor Newton passed away. But Malcolm from Turners, he's a qualified bereavement counsellor, and he offered to give his time free. So maybe that's something to look at, Kerry, when you do. And I know it's not well, it is an agenda item as such, because it's the update from Kerry and Nick. So it is it's just a comment on what their ideas are. But they're both really, really good ideas. And I say, have a chat with Malcolm as well, Kerry, because I say he's a qualified bereavement counsellor.
Okay, thanks for that, Jenny.
Thanks, Jen.
Jenny, very useful. Going back to the umbrellas, I think what we need to do is, as Chris says, put it as an action point on the next meeting. And in terms of budgets, hopefully there will be a roundup of this year's budget, and we can, if there is money available, we can decide how to spend that. And also, our budgets have been constrained a little bit this year, but we will be reviewing budgets as the year goes through in the next financial year. So if that can be put down as an action point, that would be great for next year. And I noticed Jen's got her hand up again. Thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to get it down.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Right, that's fine. Okay, so are we all happy for that to be an agenda item, an action point for the next meeting?
Yes, Chair.
And we also take the point. I mean, obviously, if we have a funeral director who's willing to fund it, then that will take away the budgetary requirement. But I guess the funeral director will probably want to have their logo on the umbrella, so that's still so. If Nick's really good at getting money out of people, so I don't know whether he'll be doing something on that. But come back to us, Nick, if we can move on with that. Back to you then, Kerry.
Okay, so I've also been looking at having separate memorial rights from burial rights. I've spoken to other local councils and they're the same as us in that it's all included within the burial rights at the moment. So I've been doing some searching online, and so far I've found no other councils. So further research is needed on this.
Yeah. I replied to your email this late last night, Kerry. I don't know if you got it, but the original idea or suggestion came from is it Alan Fairchild, I think it is, who's a cemeteries advisor to NALC, I think, and also some national organisations. And he suggested it at a training course I went to. So and when I mentioned it to Tina, she said, "Oh yes, I know him well." So I think we can probably talk to him about it, and he should be able to give us information. The idea is that you have more contact with people, or contact at an earlier stage, because the lease runs out shorter on the memorial than it does on the exclusive right to burial.
This is the problem we're finding with the Lawn Cemetery at the moment, that we're writing to the deed holders, and obviously some of them have moved.
Yeah.
And we've had one recently where we did a burial. We sent the deed of grant out 3 months later, and it got returned because they'd moved.
Right. That's difficult, isn't it? And Jen has got her hand up again.
Yeah, thank you. It's a follow-up from what Kerry was saying, actually. When people, and I hold my hand up, I'm a culprit. I keep saying I'll come in and change my address, but I haven't. But yeah, I mean, people move on and that, or people will put things on the graves that aren't actually the deed holders. So if you can't get hold of the deed holder, then you're going to have quite a few problems, aren't you, Kerry?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Jen. That's great. Okay, so you're going to come back to us with a bit more about that once you've found out. And carry on, Kerry. I think we've got at least one other thing on your.
Yeah, my last one I wanted to mention was the Orchard Remembrance Garden, and the request that we've had about interring multiple sets of ashes. So Nick's laid the foundations of the Orchard Garden, and we are just liaising with the undertaker at the moment concerning interring the multiple sets of ashes. So I'm just waiting for an update from them at the moment.
Okay. Great, thanks very much for that, Kerry. Anybody got any questions they want to ask Kerry before we move on to Nick? Okay. Oh, Brenda's got a hand up. Lovely, thank you.
Yeah. When you say multiple, do you mean these are ashes that people haven't gone and collected?
Yes, that's correct. There's about 20 sets of ashes.
So what would happen in the future if then you ended up needing that piece of land? I'm just thinking, you and how would all the ashes go in? Would you put a plaque for everyone, or will you just stick them in a hole loose? I'm trying to get an understanding around what the idea is.
I think the area they're intended to go in is the bit right by the gates. On one side of the gates, we've got the area where we're putting all the soil and the compost and stuff like that. And then on the other side of the gates, we've already established that garden, the Orchard Garden. And so that is allocated as a sort of an area of rest where people can spend time. But those, I'm pretty sure that's where we're intending for those remains to go. But Nick, would you like to come in there and give a little bit of detail about how the remains would be interred in that area?
Yeah, so basically we would dedicate a small area of the garden to lay the ashes to rest, with a marker just to explain what that is in that area. Also, that would obviously be a potential area as well for the sanctums and things to go in a future sort of development. So there's a little bit more on my report about that on the update coming up on next.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thanks for bringing that up, Brenda. Now, I did see Jenny Hollis's hand pop up and then go down. So I assume Brenda's covered your points, has she, Jenny?
She did.
Okay, thanks very much. That's great. Okay, we'll move on to Nick then, because I thank you very much for that, Kerry. That's a very good report. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Cemetery Officers update. So testing of memorials has commenced, and this is going on to the memorials after the 5 years previous test that was recommended. The plots to be tested from April through to plots A to J on a per month basis. This will allow for administration and follow up regarding any failed memorials, so that will give Kerry time to obviously follow up with administration. So it'll be plots A to J from April, that will be retested. We need to review and agree the ongoing situation of current state memorials and agree a view to if we now start laying a memorial after the 5 years, or previously after the 3 months of the initial test. As there's different options available. Some councils are burying the memorial 1/3 into the ground as a possible solution, but I've been in contact with Norwich City Council, who are also experiencing a lot of the similar problems to us with failed memorials, and that's on attachment 1 if everybody has got that. And there's a copy there of the letter that responds back to my inquiry to them.
Can I just halt you there, Nick, because I've got Brenda with her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, Nick. When you're staking, are you staking lower than what we did before? Because if you remember, we said that it looked ugly, didn't it?
Yeah, so basically we cut the stake heights down to the height of the memorial, so it's less of an impact. But going forward, we will be using 1 stake per memorial with a proper banding system that we've recently purchased.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks for that, Brenda. Okay, Nick. I'm not sure if everyone got. I thought it was interesting the reply from Norfolk from the Norfolk cemeteries, and I think they have similar ideas about laying down the memorials and creating the trip hazard. And I think they did they say that they had actually done this thing where they actually bury the memorial 1/3 into the ground to make it more stable.
It's currently a solution they're currently looking at the moment with their councillors and committee. They haven't actually gone forward with that yet.
That's quite labour intensive though, isn't it? Because you have to dig down quite a way, don't you? So yeah. So do you think we've got to a situation where we've got some resolution on that, or is it we still need to sort of think a bit more about it or get advice?
I think if we could get a small group of us together and obviously go on perhaps on site and have a look at a solution of where we want to go forward with it, and then obviously bring perhaps to the next meeting as a resolution, that would be a good move forward.
I think that's a really good way of moving forward. And as there are only a few councillors on this committee, we are a small group. So I've got Dennis with a hand up. So let's take Dennis here, please.
Thank you, Chair. No, it was just a matter of, obviously burying a memorial a third way down would alleviate our problem, but it would also, it may cause other problems. And first, as you said, the amount of labour and the cost, if it had to be borne by the cemetery committee or the council as a whole. And second of all, on some memorials, if you're burying them 1/3 down, you're covering up part of the wording on the memorials, and that may cause problems from the people whose memorials put them up. So we do need to look into that, but we also have to look for the problems it may bring us. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Dennis. So I've got Jenny with her hand up again. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a question for the committee. About 3 years ago, I think it was, we went with it might be longer, times just going nowhere at the moment. We went with the cemetery committee went with the BAM, was it BRAM? Nick can remind us, where they have to enforce the headstone and that anyway. There's guidelines on that, and that should be in cemetery regs or rules anyway. So why all of a sudden is it coming up again that if the stonemasons are following the council's guidelines for the rules for putting headstones in, why is it we're still getting this problem? Nick can most probably answer me that. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, if you can come in, Nick, and answer that'd be great.
So basically, any new memorial that is installed on site now has to be to the BRAM or NAM regulations. That's a British standard regulation that's set out in all cemeteries. This means that any memorial now fixed has to be ground anchored with a stainless steel pin going through the base of the headstone, and this will then take the further problems away of obviously the memorial failing and becoming unstable and a health and safety risk. The problem we have is a lot of the stones that have failed are previously to when the recommendation foundation of Bram and Nam came in with the stainless steel ground anchors, and this was around about the 2002-3 time. So it didn't come in till very recent, after several incidents within cemeteries of people being injured and also seriously lives taken. So obviously we've got this issue with the memorials previously that aren't ground anchored, that are the ones that are failing and obviously becoming the unstable issues with.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I knew it had sort of come in afterwards that we were set on them having to have this. But I thought also previously in previous meetings that it was talked about that maybe we put like, because you can't really touch them for 100 years, can you? They're grounded for 100. Well, it was 100 years. Obviously now the rules have changed. It's a shorter time. But the really old ones that were loose and that when it's spoken about being put maybe round the fence as you enter the cemetery, round that fence or round the edges of the cemetery, am I remembering right? As I say, time, and that's gone out the window this past year. So can you put me right on that one as well, please, Nick? Thank you.
Yeah, so previously I think we did speak about in previous meetings about possibly the solution of taking the memorials and, like you say, placing them around the edge of the cemetery. The problem again is obviously the fixing of them and the security of them, because obviously they do have to be ground anchored now, any new fitted memorial. So it would be the issue of obviously then installing them and getting them ground anchored so they were safe. The only method I think that most councils are looking at the moment is the 1/3 burial into the ground, which obviously takes some of the risk obviously away, and it obviously deals with the solution of still being able to be visibly able to see the inscriptions on the memorials. So that is a bit of a sort of a thing to look forward to, obviously, on the decision and ways of moving forward in the way of dealing with these.
Right, and then it's getting in contact with the deed holders to advise on what's going to happen. And where will the cost of that come from? Will that be from the cemetery committee or will that be down to the deed holders?
That's correct. Yeah, that's something that we're going to definitely have to sort of look into moving forward, and obviously see the cost of impact to us on those sort of things. So there is a little bit more research to do. Norwich City Council have came back to us and obviously said that they would be happy to work alongside us and try and come to some conclusion of the best way to deal with these sort of things moving forward, because obviously they're experiencing the same issues. So we're also booked in, hopefully soon as they will start courses again, for a memorial testing course, which will obviously give us a little bit more information on solutions and moving forward in an action plan. But that's something that will be coming in shortly once the COVID restrictions sort of relax a little bit.
Okay, I've got Brenda with her hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'm a bit concerned long term. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't like to move that headstone for a start. You know, if we've got to lay it flat, we've got to lay it flat. The only trouble at laying it flat is long term. You know, when the lawnmower's going along, it's going to have to end up going over the top of these somehow, because it's going to be, there'll be so many laying flat if people don't come along. And trying to get through to the actual people is going to be hard. Some people might come, I don't know, every 5 years or so. So, you know, is it a case that you stick a note on and you have to keep making sure that note's there until somebody answers you, and you put a time limit on it? You know, I don't know. It's a big decision to make. But, you know, taking them out, I think it was a bit different when you come to St Cuthbert's, because they could put them in the wall there. We can't do anything like that. And when it comes to the really old ones, I don't think you'd ever stabilise them, because the ground would never be stabilised. You know, that's why they are like they are at the moment, all wobbly, but most of them are secure. You know, so, but when we say we move them, then that's going to be a hell of a cost, because then you've got to get a proper grave man in to actually put them into the ground, and with metal things and everything else. We're sort of like doing like a new burial, aren't we, when we put them? because I don't know how far they go down, but they go down a long way. Not like today. If we don't go so far, I don't think we go so far down as what the old stones used to. But I think long term it's going to be I think when we start saying we're going to lay them down, we've got to look at the consequences of laying them down, particularly, you know, the lawnmower. You know, we moan people put headstone stuff onto the grass instead of just keeping it on their memorial. But then we're going to have this problem where we've got all these gravestones laying down on the grass. So I think it's a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Brenda. I think if we leave the discussion at that, I mean, it's obvious that it's a difficult situation and we're going to have to make some, it's a difficult decision for us to make. It involves safety and it also involves budget. So I think it was Nick's suggestion of having an on-site meeting. So if Nick, could you organise that we meet on site as just a small group of us to have a look at those issues, and I'd like to think that we could invite Brenda and Jen along to that if they would like to come. And so can you organise something in the next 3 or 4 weeks maybe, and we can have a look at the issues on site. And yeah, is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, not next week. I'm going to Southwold.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that, Brenda.
I said not next week. I'm going to Southwold.
Oh, okay. So yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
that's fine. Well,
with Dave is to set up a little small working party, and we'll go up and have a look and
that'd
try and
be good,
discuss
yeah.
around some of the issues and go a bit further, because it
we
is
can
quite a
look at the
controversial
issues, then we
subject,
can
but
meet again, can't we?
Yeah.
And
definitely.
and then we can bring
Okay,
a
so-
definite proposal to the next meeting, then, can't we?
Yes,
That's right.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you very much, then, Nick. Do you want to move on then to your next items?
Okay, so moving on to my next bit, we've had a quotation come in for some emergency lighting to be fitted into the cemetery chapel for the interior and exterior. This has been recommended from a recent fire risk assessment that we had carried out on the chapel. And this will allow us for using the building for out of hours, i.e. for memorial services and our Christmas services moving forward as restrictions relax. So it's a recommendation, obviously, from the company that done the risk assessment, and that was the only thing that was really majorly picked up. If we use the building out of hours, we should have some emergency lighting. I've got a quotation from a local electrician, and it's came in at a reasonable £295, and that's including obviously the fitting and everything of the lighting, and this will make the chapel available for out of hours use. So it's just moving forward. If anybody has any ideas of moving forward with that one, if we can sort of get that passed through to get that installed.
Well, I'd like to think. Oh, so Brenda, come in first.
Yeah, I was just going to say I don't think we've got a choice whether you've got the money. I mean, it's not my decision to make, but I don't think you've got a choice. You know, you've a bit an health and safety issue's been brought up, and I just think you've got to go with it, really.
Okay, and I've got David Brooks with his hand up as well, please. Thank you.
Yeah, just a point of order on this. If you look at both of these agenda items and the following one, it does say decision required none. As officers, we have to be a lot more careful in terms of predetermining what we're trying to get out of the agenda item. Now, we are in the new financial year, and cemetery maintenance budgets will allow us to do this. If you discuss it under health and safety, then, and it is a health and safety requirement because it's been picked up by a health and safety report, we can make a recommendation to, but in future, just a quiet word to the officers, we do need to have to be really careful in what we ask in the decision required. I noticed there's several areas in an upcoming report that's asking for decisions, and it doesn't state that in the decision required. But I think if you pick this up in the next agenda item as a health and safety matter, then we may well be able to get by on this meeting. But in the future, we need to be very much more careful.
The health and safety agenda also says decision required none. As I mean, this is a bit of a difficult because that's something that's only just started happening on the agendas. This decision required line, and and also I wasn't aware that we were not putting the budget on the agenda either, but I did notice that it's actually on the allotments agenda. Sorry, there's a line for budget for looking at the budget, and specifically to look at the underspend I think it says the underspend in the current year and whether to move stuff forward. But I think it sounds from what David just said that we've missed the opportunity to, if there is an underspend, I'm not sure if there is, to move any underspend on and allocate it to specific things. So it's a bit unfortunate that our meeting just overlaps into the new financial year. So am I right in that, David, that
I mean, I've got privy to, I mean, basically, I think in terms of allotments, there's been so little movement in their budget that it's pretty easy to determine what year end will be. In terms of cemeteries, then obviously there is ongoing differences with interments and burials that will carry on right until the end of the year. We are now in April, so Alan's working hard, but I'm just looking at what is predicted to be the end of year. And although we have a positive variance in terms of income, we have an overspend in terms of expenditure, but it is pretty much relative. So in terms of the overall budget, we've actually did reasonably well to wash our face and keep it on track. The area that we have got the overspending expenditure is under cemetery maintenance. So some of these items that we're discussing, looking at the expenditure lines in your budget, that's the only area that we could pretty much look to be a little bit creative with in terms of improvements and things like that. So maybe going forward, Chair, that we might need to look at the budget and create some sublines underneath expenditure headings, so we can determine whether we can allocate monies within that remit to certain things such as improvements. But that's for next meeting possibly, but we've just got to be careful with this one because it looks as if your budget has just come out pretty much on track.
Okay. So basically at this meeting we haven't got any leeway to decide any expenditure. So when is our next meeting? Is that I think we're moving.
I haven't actually done the calendar yet, Chair, because we're getting ready for mayor making. But
I think we're moving to a 2 monthly gap rather than.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Now,
so it would be June. Yeah, it would be June, David.
Okay. Well,
and the other thing, if there is a spend in the future, you know, a bit like these umbrellas, a bit like this, you know, the cemetery maintenance and that sort of thing, it's always best to have a separate item rather than come in the middle of a report.
Well, yes, exactly. Right. Well, we'll bear that in mind for the future, and we'll just have to be a bit more specific in our if we are intending to make any or to propose any expenditure, we'll make sure it gets put into the agenda as a separate item. I do feel that I am and the committee, the members, are being put in a bit of a strange situation where we are not really being allowed to make any decisions because of the way the agenda has been put together.
Yes.
And I know I was consulted on the agenda, but I wasn't aware of these technicalities. We'll move on, I think, because I don't think we can do much more. But we will bring this up under health and safety, this item, and see. I mean, as David said, we may be able to be creative with the budget, but I'm not sure how that works. Okay, so back to you, Nick. We will come back to this emergency lighting under health and safety.
Yeah, no worries. So positively moving on, the Peace Project Garden is well underway for the Forgotten Soldiers, and an official opening ceremony date has now been set for Sunday the 18th of July, with government guidelines allow. And so that was just a brief update about the garden. We've got a cemetery newsletter and Friends of the Cemetery currently in progress at the moment and being put together, some ideas and bits and pieces. And we've potentially put like a small poster together for this Friends of the Cemetery, just sort of advertising for members of the public and the community to be able to get involved with sort of general tasks of helping maintain like the flower tubs, some of the wildlife and conservation, some of the memorial services, and also to sort of try and help promote the cemetery a little bit with the history and the famous families we have buried on site. Also, we're now putting together a newsletter. Potentially
I've got Jen with her hand up. Can Jen just come in now, please?
I'm quite happy for Nick to finish. It was about the cemetery, but let Nick finish.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring you in a minute.
No worries. So just briefly carrying on from the Friends of the Cemetery, we are trying to engage with our members of the public and the local community a little bit more. And we're now in the process of producing a newsletter, which will be produced throughout spring, summer, autumn and winter. And it will just give a basic description and update on there of basically projects that are happening on the cemetery, work that's being carried out throughout those sort of seasons. So it's just basically engaging with our public a little bit more and explaining to them what's happening within the area of the cemetery.
Okay, lovely. And we'll go to Jen now then, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The Friends of the Cemetery, I'm taking it that Nick is doing the work for that and not the committee members.
I think that's true, yes.
Well, I thought it was agreed when myself and Brenda come up with the idea of Friends of the Cemetery was to not just help with guidance, I mean, obviously under Nick's guidance, to do a little bit around the cemetery, but it was more to raise funds for the cemetery. But that was a committee, the committee was going to take that on and not the officer.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if I remember that. I'm not sure. I may not have even been on the committee when that was brought up. I may have been.
No, I don't think you were.
Okay. You think I was or wasn't? Sorry.
I don't think you was.
No, so I don't remember that. But that's something we can pick up. Maybe that could be an action point for the next meeting to just clarify exactly how the friends are going to be set up. Is that acceptable for people? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Nick, for that. The newsletter, I think, is a great idea. And would we be aiming possibly to try and, I'm not quite sure who we would send the newsletter out to, or whether we would just do a printed copy or whether we would email it. But I thought that might be a good way to try and get the current leaseholders a bit more informed. I assume, I don't know how often we communicate with the people who've got grants and are responsible for the memorials and the graves. How often do we communicate with them? Is it just when there's a problem with their gravestone, or do we communicate with them more often than that?
No, it's just when there's a problem with the headstone, and obviously if they've bought the deed of grant, then obviously we just send them a letter with it as well. But that's the only times at the moment that we're in contact with them.
I just wondered whether we could incorporate sending them the newsletter every time we produce one. I mean, we'd obviously if we send it by email, we'd need their permission to do that. And we probably haven't got email addresses for a lot of them anyway, but if we start doing it, and that way we're actually communicating with them and reminding them of, we could possibly have a little bit in there, just reminding them to update their details. Obviously, if they haven't updated their details, they won't get it. But that way we're communicating with them more often, and it's more in their mind that they have that responsibility, and they're also hearing more about the exciting things that are happening in the cemetery. So that's something we might want to think about there. Okay. we've got a health and safety item that I know Nick wants to move on to when we get to that. We've got something about I don't think the water testing is a separate agenda item, is it, Nick?
No, I just generally briefly just cover that. And we've had obviously the quarterly testing took place back in February, and the results have come back and have shown an increase in groundwater levels. But given the recent wet weather, this is not surprising. The chemical nitrate levels are within the general range, and there is no need for any concern. And quarterly monitoring will continue, and we will be advised if any concerns arise by the company.
Okay. My concern about the quarterly monitoring is it's quite a large part of our budget, and the time I've been on this committee, all the reports seem to be saying more or less the same thing, and I just wondered if that is a thing that we are required. Is it an endless thing that we're going to have to do forever, or have we established that we haven't got an issue in terms of I think it's nitrates is the main thing they're worried about. There are other chemicals as well, but it seems to be fairly stable and not really changing. So I just wonder whether we are going to be required to continue to do that monitoring. Do you know anything about the legality of that, Nick? I know it's the Environment Agency who've required this.
Yeah, I was going to say we are restricted by the Environment Agency a lot of the time with this sort of thing. But it's definitely something we can look at moving forward and have discussions with them. I
bet maybe we can do it less often, and that way it will reduce the cost. But it just seems like it's a lot of money to spend just to find out the same information every quarter. But I'm not an expert on this, and but if you can find out about that and come back to us, that'd be really good. Okay,
and that's me completed.
That's you done. I might just have the other thing that that might be good to bring up here, because it's not a separate item, is the Mark sent out an email about wanting to do a vegetation management review, and I wondered if maybe we could that's a good idea, Nick, for us to talk about that at this stage. Not talking about the wildlife friendly bit yet, but we'll move on to that in a minute. But the ID Verde, I think, have been in place for a year roughly now, and I think there's a review about their performance and our requirements. So just wondered if there was things we could say about that at this stage. Have there been? I think there have been a few issues, haven't there, Nick?
Sorry, Dave, I just lost you then.
Oh, sorry. I think there have been a few issues with ID Verde, a few little teething issues, and I wondered if they were resolved now. And that may be something we could feed back to Mark.
I've been liaising with our contractor with a few recent issues. We had an instance with the cutting when they done the first cut this season. Unfortunately, they'd sort of ploughed through some of the flowers and bits that was laying on the ground and made a little bit of a mess, which they resolved. They had the team in and spoke to them, and the second cut they've now done has been much better and more acceptable. The other thing was we have had a couple of memorials unfortunately caught, and again this has been dealt with, and I've been liaising with the contractor who has agreed to cover the cost of any repairs that are needed on those memorials, so that everything's been resolved.
Okay, so it sounds like we've had some issues, but the company are dealing with them, which is good. So I mean, if we feel that there's anything that we need to write into the contract or amend at the review, then we need to forward that on to Mark. So I don't know if any of the councillors have got any views on that or things that we should be feeding back. But I think Mark wants the feedback by the end of this month, so we won't have another meeting before then. So if anyone's got anything to say on that, that would be good. Okay, we'll move on then. And the other thing that it's maybe David Brooks actually on this one. I just wondered what was happening about the work to improve the works yard, because we went through the tender process. The tender was accepted, and I assume we're just waiting for the contractor to let us know when they can come in and do the work. So I don't know if we've got an update on that.
I haven't got too much of an update for you, Chair. We have discussed the works yard review. I think it's suspended just for a couple of months while we try and formalise one or two areas of that agreement with the contractor. Yeah, it's not imminent at the minute, and we are in discussions with the contractor as to when we can commence. But we will bring that up certainly at the next meeting.
Okay. I mean, I would like to think that the officers could look at that urgently, because all the way through we've said that it is important for health and safety, and there are some welfare considerations in terms of the facilities that that our staff have in that works area, and the surface of the yard is very poor as well. So if we can move on that as fast as possible, that would be brilliant. Just feeding that back. I'm expecting Chris Harvey to come rushing in at that stage, but he hasn't.
No, I'm here. I'm listening. I must admit.
Okay.
I was waiting for the health and safety bit to come up, but
okay.
I'm totally gobsmacked that this isn't imminent. This has been an ongoing issue for ever since I've joined the council. It's one of the first things we tried to put right was the poor staff's welfare, the health and safety of the yard. We agreed to tender some time ago. And as I said, I hadn't been over the cemetery due to COVID. And when I went to have a look, I was very disappointed the fact the work wasn't done. But to find out it's not imminent is even worse. I mean, do we have no feelings or regard for the welfare and health and safety of our staff? Are we putting money first? I must admit, I'm a trifle miffed now, and I don't get miffed often.
Can I just come back on that one? When I say it's not imminent, it's not that we're not dealing with the issue, Councillor Harvey. We have discussed it with the contractors. We're waiting for a reply from them, and as soon as we get that reply, then we can schedule in the works. Alan and I visited the cemetery and the works yard a couple of weeks back, and I absolutely share your views on some of the health and safety issues, certainly with some of the refreshment, the sort of common areas that they can go to the toilet and things like that. So it is absolutely desperate that we get it sorted out. They have undertaken a lot of clearing rubbish from the yard, so it's a lot safer in respects of moving around, and we do need work staff to continue with that. But yes, it's say it's not imminent. I don't mean that we put it on the back burner and it's there left. You've looked at the tender, you've agreed the tender, we've contacted the contractors. We just now need to chase them to get it scheduled in.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, David. I mean, if when things are moving forward, even if you haven't got a decision about when the contractor's coming on site, but if you could keep us updated, just perhaps a short report every time that there is some movement or even more delay, then that would be very useful for us to have that. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, I will do, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Great. So I think we are moving. We have moved into health and safety, I think, a bit already, but we formally will move into health and safety, apart from somebody's got their hand up.
Yes. It's your vice chair.
Oh, it's Dennis. Sorry, I was trying to work out who DC was again. Sorry.
Okay, David. No, going back to the matter, the welfare with the contractors, is it a difficulty with them being able to start the work because they have too many jobs on, or is it something to do with the COVID or anything? I'm not quite sure why we haven't started this, because I am of the opinion, like the rest of the committee, that it's a very important thing that we get this done as soon as possible. So okay. I'm just looking for a reason why we can't get it started.
Is there any more information on that, David, or is that?
No, we're just waiting for the contractors to come back. I appreciate and hear all your concerns, so I will move it up the priority list to chase those contractors. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you, David. That's good. Okay, so we'll formally move on to health and safety, which is 963. So I think there's probably Nick or any other councillors who want. Do you want to come in first, Nick? If there's, we've obviously got the thing about the The emergency lighting.
Yeah, so the only thing that I had was mainly the emergency lighting, but obviously we'll move forward with that one ongoing as and when. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, what I can say about that, Chair, is the fact that it has been raised under health and safety. It is a case of a requirement due to an inspection. So through our legal responsibilities for health and safety, we will get that actioned. It's nothing that this committee needs to do in terms of resolution.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
but it will be, and we will provide an update at the next meeting.
And that would come out of the maintenance budget, I guess, wouldn't it?
It'll come out of the health and safety budget.
Okay, right.
Personnel, yeah.
Lovely. Okay, thanks very much then.
Chair, can I come in here, please?
Yes, carry on, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for that. That was something I was going to whinge about, but you've saved me whinging there about the lighting, so that's okay. I said I hadn't been over the cemetery on official business for ages and ages, and I did find a trip hazard, which our officer alleviated the issues straight away. I must admit, I'm not happy with this fact. Health and safety decision required none. Supposing we raise an issue that's vital, why we should be able to make the decision there and then? Not why does it say none?
It depends what the decision is, Councillor Harvey, because if it's part of our legal obligations, then it's facilitated by another committee. It's just raised in, really, this is just about raising those issues and reporting against the fact that we've actually, completed and rectified the issues, because the signing off and payment and actioning will be done through our health and safety processes that are controlled by personnel. So within other committees and this committee, it's just a case of, we've done an inspection, we flagged up those trip hazards, the officer immediately rectified that issue. It's trying to keep that kind of process. So it's a reporting process. So it's very unusual that we will have a decision required unless it's at a point where the expenditure requires going to full council. And in actual fact, one of the underlying issues of this committee's decision around the tendering for the workyard was because of certain health and safety issues. So it depends on the scale and the importance of the health and safety issue, that it can't be dealt with through our normal health and safety processes by personnel, such as the emergency light. So we've had an inspection, they've flagged that up, let's just get it done. And then we come back to this committee and assure everybody that as a cemetery committee, we're on top of things and it's all been rectified, which will happen next month. So this is still an important agenda item. And at times that will not say none all the time. It will have specific. So we need pre-meetings to try and predetermine what we want to get out of the agenda items. That's why we've got decision required and lead. And I think that's a good move for the council.
Okay.
I've got Brenda with her hand up.
Have I allowed to come back? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You carry on, and then we'll bring Brenda in straight after you.
Every single committee that we do health and safety on, is this going to come up decision required none? And I would prefer decision required as needed. I mean, to hear the word none, I mean, I don't like the word none. It means nothing.
I think going forward, Councillor Harvey, it's probably more pertinent to receive update and report against health and safety issues, something like that, because at least it means that we've addressed the issues, or if not, we can flag them up to be dealt with. But we don't really have to recommend a health and safety decision is made by this committee or any other. It's something that we have a legal responsibility to, and we should action it as a matter of emergency if it's flagged up by inspection.
Okay, I wasn't being stroppy, Dave, but I'd rather you call me Chris. It's a bit too posh, Councillor Harvey. Thank you.
You're never stroppy.
Right, over to Brenda then. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with what Dave was saying, because I can't remember whether it was full council or out, but something was brought to there, and actually it's Tina's responsibility to act. And basically what she was saying, if you're going about the town and you find something and you think that's a health and safety risk, you then you email Tina. But when you're going to a committee, it might have been something that you spotted overnight, so you can highlight it to the officers in the meeting. But I think it's the right way to go, although it does look awful looking none, you know. But it could be a very small health and safety issue, and it's does the committee want to deal with it now, or do you want to leave it? So I think this is the best way for it to go. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I think possibly it would have been better under health and safety to have had the emergency lighting as an item with decision required, not saying none, or just decision required. And then, but I think that's what David said, that that you won't always just see health and safety, you'll see health and safety with specific items there, and then the decision required bit will be different. So yeah, we've given that one a good airing, thanks for that. So we perhaps we may not agree with it completely, but we understand it a little bit better, hopefully. So that's great, thanks very much. And just a quick look, no one's got their hand up. And we'll move on to 964, which is the wildlife friendly measures at the cemetery. And I guess Mark's going to come in with this, is he?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hopefully everyone's has seen the report. Mindful of David's points about sort of when we actually require a decision or when we're actually going to spend any money. But basically, I suppose what we're looking for from this, from members, is whether or not you agree with the proposals put out in here. Many of them are largely cost neutral anyway, or can be sort of expenditure can be allocated, you know, during the year as required. So we're not looking for sort of specific decisions on expenditure today, but there are sort of basically a number of proposals within the report that's been issued. Do you want to basically sort of take them one by one and sort of members to get a sort of decision on each of the proposals?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good way forward. Yeah.
Mark, would you want me to stop presenting the slides so you can take over with your report?
We could do, yeah. If it's not in there in its sort of complete form, that would be helpful. I can do that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Mark, Mr. Chairman, before you start, can I just ask Mark a question?
Yeah, carry on.
Well, you've asked for a decision. Isn't this a recommendation? Because it's a lot of land, and wouldn't this go to full council? I'm just asking the question. You know, I haven't got no concerns. I'll give it a good reading, but I don't know whether, because it's such a large space, this has to go to full council. I don't know.
I wouldn't have thought so, because it's not a large area of expenditure or a massive change in what we're doing. I mean, David Brooks might have a view on that, but I don't know.
Just quickly looking through the report, I think there's only actually about £400 worth of expenditure. We are going into the new budget, so you will have an opportunity to spend small sums of money. There is something that we might need to flag up a little bit later, but I'll leave Mark to his presentation.
Okay, I'll do that now. Right, hopefully everyone can see the Word document coming up there then.
Yeah.
Okay, super. So I'll just sort of pause over the map for a little bit so everyone gets the chance to sort of see that. As I said, hopefully all members have had a chance to have a look at this already. But basically there's sort of six sort of areas there, or six sort of proposals where we think we can enhance the habitats of the cemetery without distracting from its fundamental purpose and the look and good maintenance of the site. I should also mention this as well before I forget. In addition to this, we do actually have some externally funded bird boxes that have been, as I said, provided by some local companies, and there are bird boxes and bat boxes, and there's also a Swift box. and the proposal with the Swiftbox, I think, was to install it on the side of the chapel building. So before we go into the sort of meat of the report, I just wanted to check that that would, I think it's been sort of mentioned before, and as a sort of, I think it's been, as I said, raised with members before, but is everyone still happy with that idea that we do install the Swiftbox at the site?
Yes.
I'm happy with that. Do other?
I'm also happy, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, one down. Right. So as I said, if I'll just run through the stuff on the map here. So we'll look at number one is sort of the area between the dark area between the very shady area between the car park and the fence there, and the proposal there is for bulbs and or hedging. And I'll go into more detail of these as we do them line by line in a second. Hedging around the sort of in front of the fence around the yard. Number three is a patch where it backs onto a sort of kind of wooden fencing there, which is, again, the intention is to screen that with probably again mixed native hedging, particularly with reference to some thorny plants. This area here, number 6, by occasional tree planting, it refers to a bit like some of these areas have been done now with sort of trees in the green tubes, which we placed not near any of the existing tended graves, but there's quite a bit of space in that area where that could happen. And again, while we're looking at the maps, I'll just flag up the fact that the war graves Commonwealth war graves start about here, and the area which we're suggesting as initially be put into the meadow management regime is not including those. And the pond suggestion is, again, for that area we've been talking about already, the Orchard Memorial Gardens. So as I say, I'll go through these one by one, and then you can decide on.
That's quite a small pond,
right,
isn't it, Mark? That one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We were at one stage thinking of a sort of rather larger pond for this kind of area, which is, as I said, is still possible. I know you're going to look at that area sort of again at your next meeting, I think, and beyond.
And I've got Brenda with her hand up. If do you want to come in now, Brenda?
Yeah, I was just looking at the bulbs. Is there any chance of snowdrop?
Yeah, absolutely.
I always think they look nice in cemeteries.
Yeah, and it's a very early one as well, which is nice to get one in sort of right at the start of the year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so well, that leads us nicely on to item 1, I suppose. So I did put bluebells in there as one possibility, but snowdrops could definitely be included in there. So so the proposal is to plant some bulbs in, as I say, it's quite a deeply shaded area there, so it would be quite difficult to establish more sort of sun-loving plants over much of that area. But under the trees to put some more spring bulbs in. So the volunteers have already planted some daffodils in that area, but it could certainly be more sort of brightened, I think, by a variety of more bulbs. And the question, I suppose, is what to do along the edge of the car park. Nick and I sort of came up with several possibilities for that area. So it could have a sort of perennial flower beds bordering the car park there, which could have potentially a hedge behind it, sort of starting at the car park surface and moving towards the fence. You could have some flower beds in that bit where it does get a bit of light, and then you could have a hedge behind it, and then the bulbs further towards the road under the trees. Another possibility might be to use the existing fence there to plant climbers up that, and just have any plants on the car park side of the fence. But as I said, if you're going to have a hedge or climbers along the fence, that sort of does limit your options in terms of where you could put the flowers that would need more light. So I suppose the question would be, what would you like to see in the long term along that fence around the car park? And we'll just go back to the map, talking about basically that fence along there. Would you like to see that with flower beds and possibly a hedge behind it, or would you like to see climbers up that fence, or just the flower beds? I suppose those are the questions that we'd like a steer on. So log piles and other sort of bug hotels could also be put under the sort of the darker areas, as I said, underneath the trees there. That would be really useful for hedgehogs, and a whole other range of sort of mini beasts would use those log piles. So it looks like we're going to be getting quite a lot of. There's a quite large beech tree here, which is going to have to be felled. So there's definitely the opportunity to create some log piles quite easily with things that are coming on site. So I suppose.
And we've got Brenda and Dennis. Not sure who was first, but
Brenda was.
Yeah, we'll go with Brenda first then. Thank you.
Okay, although there are all terrific ideas, I think we have to think when we're talking about putting stuff, especially climbers, onto a fence. It's the long-term damage to the fence, because I've had climbers over the years, and your fence starts to rot away. So I think it needs to be. You really need to think about. We could put climbers in there; they'd be nice for a couple of years, and then they start eating into the fence. And it's going to be the long-term maintenance. Where a hedge you could sort of like put just before the fence. I don't know. We need to think about them things. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brenda. And Dennis?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my Brenda's beat me to the draw again on this. I like climbers, and they're really nice, but they do cause damage to fences over long term. So we'd have to be fairly selective of which climbers we put in there and everything. Because, if you put Russian vine in there or something, you're going to end up with troubles very quickly. So I'm with Brenda on that one. Thank you.
Did you want to come back on that, Mark? I mean, I think Dennis has said it depends what sort of climbers, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly be possible to choose climbers that I think would be sort of not attached to the fence as such, but would just wind round it. I think, all of these, as you say, they're all sort of possible ideas and all have their benefits. So it's really there's no wrong answers here. I don't think, otherwise I wouldn't have put them in as options, as it were. So I'm happy to go with whichever the sort of, I suppose, the gut feeling of the committee is really.
Well, I quite like the idea of climbers and bulbs, and not necessarily having a formal flower bed there. But I don't know what other members have got a view on that.
I would agree.
Caveat that the climbers need to be non-destructive. Sorry, Chris.
I have climbers all over my garden, all over my pergola, all over my fence. They've not caused me any problems. I have clematis, honeysuckle, passion flower, etc., etc. I really like the idea of climbers and bulbs.
Chair, it's Chris Crimmin here. Could I just butt in to give you a 15-minute warning, because they're due to have an allotment starting at 11:30.
Okay.
But most of the participants are in your meeting anyway, but I was just thinking about the public. So
okay, I'll take that on board. Thank you.
My bell's been ringing, summoning me to a meeting.
Right. Well, we probably need to move on a bit more promptly. I think we've agreed on climbers and bulbs. Do you need any more of a steer on that, Mark?
No, that'll be fine if the committee's happy with that. Carefully chosen climbers so that they don't attack the fencing materials. Hedging in front of the fencing around the works yard, mixed native hedge. As I say, I'll apply basically for free trees on this one. Yes or no?
I would say yes with that.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that an all-round yes? Great.
I think
okay.
so, yeah.
Same on the area of that sort of kind of older wooden fencing, which was just round the corner from the works yard. I'll just go back to the map, perhaps. Rid of that. So again, fencing or hedging to fill in these sort of gaps here with some thorny stuff for extra security. A yes or no, I guess.
Yes for me.
Yeah, to that
Yes,
one.
please. Yeah. Good. As long as they cut them level.
Yeah. Okay. Pond within the memorial garden. Yes or no?
Yes.
In principle, depending on subject to budget decision later on. Yeah.
What I'm going to suggest is that we say yes or no to these things and look at the budgetary implications at a future meeting, because I think you can move ahead without having any money in the pot for a lot of the things, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's probably the best way forward, if we
Yeah.
agree the improvements and then approve the budget at a later meeting, because we can't really look at the budget today, I don't think.
Well done, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully you can see this map at the bottom. These are these three areas, the existing parts being managed as wildflower meadows. So I think they've been really super. They haven't sort of caused controversy. They've been a real asset to the site, I think, in many ways. So the proposal was, in the same way as this area and indeed these areas, to again manage these two patches where there is, as I said, there are no tended graves. It's a historic area. It's away from the entrance to the site as well, so they seem to fit the same sort of criteria as the original ones. This patch here and this patch here, as I said, stopping short of where the Commonwealth wool greys are, to manage those as wildflower meadows, so they would get the same cuts as the rest of it, i.e. A once a year cut and rake, and they would also be mown around the edges of the paths, and basically as defined neat areas of wildflower meadows. So this one and this one as wildflower areas, again, a yes or no on that one, please.
Well, before we do that, we've got Brenda with her hand up, so we'll take Brenda and then.
Yeah, it was just a quick one. At the back of the tree, right at the back, there's some gates that lead into an allotment side. Is there any way that we can sort of hide them gates? Because I don't think they're used, are they?
Somewhere along here.
It's right at the back of the cemetery on the.
Oh, on the other side.
They I think the gates.
Right, yeah.
We've always thought that was an ugly site.
Down there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll liaise with Nick over whether we can or can't, and Carl for that matter, whether we can or can't shut that off.
Yeah. Okay.
It is used, that gate. Sorry, it is still used. I saw someone go the other day.
That answers that one.
That answers that.
Okay. Thanks for that, Brenda.
It could do with hiding somehow, but I don't know. But it is used.
It is, yeah.
Well, we might, I suppose it could conceivably do a sort of L-shaped bit of hedge around it, so it's not visually seen, but is still accessible.
All right. Yeah.
I don't know whether that might be possible. I can't remember what's there
we
now.
do need to move on fairly fast, but that's
I will
great. Some ideas. So we are saying yes or no on those proposed 2 new meadows, and I would say yes on those.
Yes, Chair.
Dennis. Okay, thank you. We can review it again next year if we decide we want to cut them again.
Absolutely, yeah. Super. Okay. And yes, tree planting in this sort of area here, just sort of quite thinly scattered, as I say, away from any of the directly away from any of the tended graves. And these are trees which potentially wouldn't be grown into massive trees. No, I'd be looking at things like sort of wild cherry, crab apple, things with blossom in the spring. Size, rowan perhaps, Okay. Well, I would say yes on those.
Yes, Chair.
Oh, Brenda's got her hand up again. Sorry, Brenda.
Just a quick one. When we consider what we plant, can we think of the wildlife that's in there so that we're actually feeding them? If you get my drift.
Yeah, we'd certainly be looking to have nectar for the insects, but berries for the birds as well, definitely.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all of the recommendations. So do you need to kind of formally adopt this report then, because it does say decision required on the
yes, I think agenda, doesn't it? We've looked at the individual things, but there's no harm in us saying whether we're going to formally adopt it, and so we'll put that to the vote. I'm happy to adopt it.
Can I just say, Chair, you could make a recommendation to full council to adopt this report with the final costings to be delivered.
Okay. Do we need to do that? Because
no, not if you don't want to. No, that's fine.
No, I don't think we need to, because I think the costings are very modest. So I don't think we need to recommend it. I think it's resolved. Okay.
But it's a change to the cemetery, that's all. That you may have to put to council. I don't know. I'll take David. Have you got a view on this? Sorry, David
I
Brooks.
think you meant, yeah.
I think David indicated before that he didn't feel it was necessary to go to full council with it. If he's, I don't know if he's still there, but
Okay, that's fine.
No,
Yeah,
that-
okay,
no,
we'll
that-
just note it then.
David,
No,
I'd like to
that's-
propose we accept this wildlife report.
Yeah, exactly.
I will
Okay,
second
make
that.
that
thank you.
proposal.
Okay, so you're making that proposal. I'll second that.
Thank you.
Agreeing, Chris?
Thank you. Who was that made a proposal? Sorry, Dennis.
Dennis
yeah.
proposed, I seconded.
Thank you.
Chris
Yeah,
agrees.
thank you.
right.
You
Well,
adopt the report.
fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. I
That's
will probably
great.
leave you to it for the last 5 minutes. If
Right,
Thank you.
okay.
don't need many
Thanks
more.
very much.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
And then we'll move on swiftly to 965, which is correspondence and complaints, and that'll probably be Kerry, I think. Are you with us, Kerry?
She's her mic's off right now.
Are you there, Kerry?
In the absence of Kerry, Nick, do you know whether we have any correspondence or complaints?
Yeah,
Nick,
I think
do you
Kerry's just.
know?
I think
Oh,
Kerry's
Kerry,
just
that's
coming
fine.
in. She's having issues with her mic.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Kerry. Carry on.
Okay, sorry, I've had some problems. Okay, so we've just had a couple of complaints from people where we removed items from the lawn cemetery.
Yeah.
So I've dealt with those, and the people have collected their items. And then Nick's also had some verbal complaints from members of the public about the grass cutting, which she touched on earlier.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we'll move on then, as we're very short of time, and that's dealt with that item. And then it's committee officers update. Any updates since the issue of the agenda, which I suspect we don't have anything, but yeah, are we?
No, nothing to report.
Okay, that's fine then. Well,
Okay.
I'll just want to say a big thank you to all the staff that have worked hard on the cemeteries over this past year. So thank you very much. And